I thought I would make this video to see if I could help other people who have a similar problem that I have. So I've been having, well, first of all, I'm not a doctor. Uh, so if you have chronic sinus infection or headaches or things like that, then I would recommend you go and see a doctor. I'm not a doctor, so these are just my ideas, things that I found that help, but you should definitely go seek medical opinion if you have these problems. First of all, what I experience, so every 7 to 10 days I get sinus headaches, usually around here, or at least I get headaches. I presume they're sinuses, they're sinus infected, sinus related. I get them around here. Usually get them in the mornings when I wake up. They can be pretty bad, they can be fairly minor, but usually they come every 7 to 10 days, and they can be worse with things like colds and things like that. So, and they are pretty annoying. So let's see my history. So I know I've had these at least, well, I've had them probably for about 10 years. I know I've had a sinus infection for probably at least 6 years. In 2013, I went to ENT doctor, ear, nose, throat doctor, and they said, oh yeah, you've got a deviated septum, which is basically a slight problem up here in the back of the nose, which a lot of people have. And that's probably the thing, it's probably pushing on here and causing some problems. So they did a surgery to go and solve that. But they also, at the same time, they took an MRI, and the MRI showed that I had a chronic, I had a sinus infection right at the back of my sinuses, and my sinuses are quite convoluted, and it's hard to get up there to go sort things out. Anyway, so did the deviated septum surgery, didn't do any good, didn't solve the problem, and so I was sort of living with the headaches for a while, and I think it was actually this year, 2019. For 6 years I've been living with that, and then because I just thought, okay, well, the surgery didn't do any good, so nothing will help. But eventually I got so sick of it, I decided to go back and talk to the ENT doctor, and they took a look and said, well, look, 6 years ago you had a sinus infection. Well, maybe you still got a sinus infection. So they gave me some antibiotics with steroids to try and shift it, presuming that that was the problem. So they tried that, actually really helped for a short while, at least a month, or month, 6 weeks, I had no headaches, presumably because it had reduced the sinus infection. But they came back, and I went to see the ENT doctor again. He did another MRI, showed that I still have a chronic sinus infection at the back, and we tried a different type of antibiotic with steroids again. And again, that helped for a little bit, but again, it went back to the 7 to 10 days thing. So given that, and given what they've said, I would presume the reason why I'm getting headaches is a chronic sinus infection, which they can't shift. Okay, so the only solution he suggested is a pretty invasive surgery, which involves going to the back of my sinuses, doing some reconstructive surgery. It means going right kind of to the back where the brain is, the brain layer, and that kind of freaks me out. And I don't really want to do pretty invasive surgery if I can help it. So at the moment I'm not doing that, but it means I'm still suffering these headaches. So anyway, so what have I tried? I have tried neti pot, which you may have seen. Basically, you sort of squeeze water up one nostril, it comes out the other. It's kind of freaky when you first do it, but it's a saline solution essentially that you do, and it, some people swear by it. It sort of cleans out the sinuses. I've tried it every day. That doesn't really help. I guess basically it just doesn't go far enough back to be able to sort the problem out. I've tried, because I get it a lot in the morning, I've tried sleeping on different sides, so on my left side and my right side, to see if that would help. One thing I do notice it does make things a little easier if I sort of wake up in the middle of the night. So if I'm not sleeping not lying down for a great amount of time, but I'm a fairly heavy sleeper, so I tend to sleep for like 8 hours at a time, which doesn't help. Another thing, of course, that doesn't help is the longer I sleep, the worse it is. So if I do like a really long sleep, then it can really be a problem. I've tried, someone got me some peppermint oil, which essentially you put in hot water and then it infuses and basically causes an irritation to your sinuses, which means you sneeze and get some of the mucus out. Try doing that last thing at night to try and clear things out. That doesn't really help. Tried acupuncture. To be honest, I'm fairly skeptical about acupuncture, but I thought, well, try anything. You never know. Didn't do anything. And they prescribed some magnolia tablets, which supposedly help with sinus relief, but again, I don't really see that they do a lot of good. And of course, ibuprofen. Just try painkillers. Painkillers don't really help with this sort of problem, which is really annoying. Anyway, so ibuprofen doesn't really help unless in combination with other things, and I'll get to that now. So what does help, so this is probably the bit of the video that you care about. What have I found in the last sort of 6 to 10 years that have really helped me? Well, weirdly enough, one thing that I found really helps is running. I found this when I was training for a marathon back in 2009. So you can tell this is 10 years ago. Obviously this has been going on for quite a while. But I was getting some headaches around that time, and because I was training for a marathon, I was essentially running every morning when I got up. And so I determined that I've got to train, because if I don't train, then I'm not going to be able to do it. So I decided to run with this headache, and I ran 4 miles or something like that. And after about 2 miles, it was okay. It was really hurt. It really hurt for the first 2 miles. And that's the problem with running is, if you've got a headache and you try and run, it's really not fun. But I've tried doing this now, and I still do it now occasionally. Sometimes when I have a headache, it's just so bad I just think, oh, I just can't do this. But sometimes when I wake up, I go and do a run, and it can really help. And by the end of the 30 minutes or so after I've run a 5K, I feel pretty good. Maybe not perfect, maybe it's not completely gone, but it's mostly gone, and I can carry on with the rest of my day. Also, maybe if I put a couple of ibuprofen in there as well, just to try and sort of dull the headache just at the end of the headache, that can really help. So if you can't run, maybe a brisk walk, particularly in the cold, to get sort of the sinuses sort of, I think it's either breathing heavily through the nose or through the mouth, or it's because obviously when you're running it's mostly through the mouth, or maybe it's just moving up and down. However, I have tried using an elliptical inside, so essentially just sort of moving up and down or getting exercise, but inside. That doesn't seem to help as much, so I haven't really seemed to find that helps. Anyway, so running, and the great thing about running is you get fit. It's wonderful. Or having a brisk walk, you get fit. So it's kind of a double help. Another thing that helps is phenylphrine, which is nasal decongestant. Essentially, it's just a tablet you can take. There are other nasal decongestants which are available, and I think I've tried one. I don't know what the other type was, and I think that helped as well. The big problem with phenylphrine and other nasal decongestants is that first of all, your body can get used to them over time, which doesn't help. But the big problem is it raises your blood pressure. And if you're using them constantly, particularly for me, every 7 to 10 days, I used them for a while, and you end up with this constantly high blood pressure, and that's probably not a good idea. So to me, that's sort of the point of, it's the last resort. If I'm really sort of really annoyed with the whole thing and just nothing's working, then maybe once every month or two, maybe I'll pop a nasal decongestant. But I'm trying to use those as little as possible. And And the third thing I kind of mentioned before, but I've been trying this over the last couple of days. I'm not sure how practical it is basically don't sleep very long. Don't sort of get up in the middle of the night but I tried sleeping 4.5 hours one night because I figured it was going to come on because I had a headache the day before, and usually these headaches can last for 2 or 3 days. When they come for every 7 to 10 days, they can last for 2 or 3 days every morning. So I tried sleeping for 4.5 hours, but I was absolutely wrecked the day after. So I'm not sure that's really a very practical solution, but you may want to try if you feel that you're going to have these problems then. Essentially setting an alarm for the middle of the night and getting up and stumbling around for a short while and letting things settle and then going back to bed again. That may help. Anyway, that's all the information I have. If you're suffering from these problems, I really sympathise. It's not a lot of fun, invasive surgery doesn't sound like a really good solution. One good thing actually about the surgery, just to knock the surgery, I'm knocking the surgery, but one of the good things about the surgery that the ENT doctor said is that he will essentially sort the passageways out. So if I do get another infection again, I could essentially sluice them out with the neti pot, and it would get rid of them. So it wouldn't end up sort of sticking up there. However, having said that, we don't know for sure that it's this infection that's causing the problem, and maybe the surgery wouldn't do anything anyway. So there is always that as well, that doctors say things and you never quite know what's going to happen. So anyway, I hope this helped, and